Picture this. It's the spring of 1645. We're standing outside the Regondo cave in Japan. Inside is Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary sword saint. He's undefeated in 61 lethal duels, but right now, he's dying. Outside, kneeling in the dirt, is a 26-year-old masterless samurai, a ronin named Tishi. Tishi's lord is dead, his entire clan has been wiped out, and he is just completely hollow. He's come to this cave for one reason and one reason only, to ask the greatest swordsman who ever lived to grant him an honorable death. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a truly fascinating piece of history and psychology, how a dying master gave a broken man the ultimate blueprint for absolute mental toughness.
Okay, let's dive into this. Musashi, who is literally coughing blood and has barely any strength left, absolutely refuses to kill Tishi. He tells him, look, I have no strength left for duels, but instead he offers him something else. He points over to a half-finished scroll resting on the low table. He tells this young ronin that if he wants to truly live, to become a warrior who doesn't need a master, he has to help him finish this scroll. And the very first line Musashi writes down is incredibly simple but brutal. Accept everything just the way it is. He basically tells Tishi, your suffering, it comes entirely from fighting reality. You're at war with the fact that your lord is dead and your clan is gone. You have to stop fighting what already is.
So Musashi's scroll contains 21 principles. It's a philosophy known as the Dokkodo, which translates to the way of walking alone. But Musashi makes one thing abundantly clear right out of the gate. These aren't just some pretty words to memorize or, an academic list to study in a classroom. No way. These are grueling, real-world survival tests designed to strip away every ounce of human weakness. Musashi isn't going to teach Tenshi by just giving him lectures. He's going to send him out into the unforgiving world and let reality break him until he either shatters completely or integrates these truths and becomes completely unbreakable. All right, let's jump right into phase 1, accepting reality as it is. Now, what's really interesting about this transformation is how to truly grasp that first principle of absolute acceptance. Musashi strips Teishi of everything. He sends him out into the world for 7 days. No food, no money, and just one strict rule: do not fight reality. Well, on day 1, Teishi is ambushed by 5 armed bandits, and they demand his swords. Now, the old Teishi, he would have exploded with anger, drawn his steel, and fought to the death just to defend his ego. But the new Teishi, grounded in Musashi's teaching, simply accepts that the bandits exist and they're making demands. He calmly tells them, I have no money, you can try to take my swords, but some of you will die in the process. And then he genuinely asks them, is that acceptable to you? Seeing his total lack of fear and his absolute clarity, the bandits are totally thrown off. They actually back down and just let him pass. Tishi's foundational tests continue over the next few days. He gets offered this lavish dinner by a wealthy merchant in exchange for guarding a compound. But he eats only exactly what he needs. He refuses the luxury of the sake and even the advances of the merchant's daughter, actively living out that second precept: do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Later on, he literally bumps into a former clan member who offers him a really comfortable, safe job with a new lord. And you can imagine, Tishi feels that strong pull of safety, what Musashi calls a partial feeling. But he rejects it. He chooses to continue walking his own independent path. He survives those 7 grueling days, returns to the cave, and passes the first trial. Which brings us to phase 2, freeing the captive mind. So, Musashi is pleased, but he doesn't let up. The tests immediately escalate, and now they're aimed entirely at dismantling the ego. For his second trial, Tishi is sent to a coastal farming village for another 7 days to do completely unrewarded, grueling physical labor. These mind precepts, they are all about freeing yourself from the prison of your own ego. When Tishi helps a fisherman pull these incredibly heavy nets from dawn to dusk, his back is just screaming in agony. But then he notices a profound shift. The exact moment he stops thinking about himself, stops monitoring his own discomfort, and stops calculating what he's going to get out of the work, the backbreaking labor suddenly feels completely effortless. By thinking lightly of himself, the physical toll completely loses its psychological weight. Every single night in this village, Tishi sits by the roaring ocean and basically performs a deep psychological purge. He systematically names his deepest desires and, mentally, tosses them right into the crashing waves. He lets go with the need for recognition. He unearths this quiet, toxic rage for revenge against the men who destroyed his clan, and he just releases it into the foam. He drops the desperate human need for certainty about his future. And finally, he throws away the ego's ultimate defense, the desire for cosmic importance, that stubborn illusion that the universe somehow revolves around him. I actually want you to pause for a second and ask yourself right now, What invisible weights are you carrying around? What story about who you are or what you think you deserve? Are you just exhausting yourself trying to defend every day? Tishi realized that the self, that narrative we are constantly trying to protect, is the root of all our suffering. When you finally stop defending that story, life becomes incredibly simple, clear, and direct.
Moving right along to phase 3, navigating relationships and desire.
So Tishi returns to the cave, only to find Musashi even closer to death. But there's no time to rest. In what is easily the most emotionally brutal trial yet, Musashi sends Tishi right back into his former clan lands. He has to directly face the life that was ripped away from him. Let me tell you, these 4 principles are agonizing to actually practice. In his old town, Tishi sees his former sword instructor training the new lord's men. And of course, jealousy flares up. His mind screams, "That should be me." But he just observes the feeling and lets it pass. Even harder, he sees Akane. This is the woman he almost married before his clan fell. She's now married to someone else, and she's visibly pregnant. The pain of that separation hits him like a literal physical blow to the stomach. But he doesn't try to avoid the feeling, and he doesn't try to fix it. He accepts that separation is a natural part of life. People move on. He simply bows to her and lets the pain exist without clinging to it.
Later that night, at a local sake house, Tishi runs into his former comrades. They're complaining bitterly, constantly justifying their choice to serve a new lord while clearly resenting Tishi for having the courage to walk away. They keep trying to drag him into an argument just to validate their own fragile egos. But Tishi refuses to play the game. He calmly looks at them and says, "You made your choice, I made mine. Both paths have value, both have cost." He completely diffuses their hostility by validating their paths without feeling even a tiny need to defend his own choices.
Okay, phase 4, detachment from the external.
Tishi survives that emotional gauntlet, but a 4th trial is waiting, and this one strips away the external world entirely. He's ordered to leave his mother's jade charm at her grave, burn his wooden practice sword, and walk up into the freezing mountains for 30 days with absolutely nothing but the clothes on his back and his 2 metal blades. Just look at this intense physical timeline. Days 1 through 3, he's starving, forcing himself to drop all preferences for taste, eating literally whatever the mountain provides. Days 4 through 10, he constantly moves his sleeping spots until sleeping on a jagged rock feels exactly the same as soft moss. By day 11, a massive 3-day storm hits. He is freezing, soaked to the bone, and starving. And then, on day 21, he falls violently ill. He's feverish, hovering near death, but he doesn't panic. He just surrenders. He thinks, if this is death, then so be it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core breakthrough of the whole journey. While he's shivering in that brutal mountain storm, Tishi finally realizes the profound difference between sensation and suffering. The cold, the wetness, the hunger, those are just physical sensations. The suffering only happens when his mind jumps in and starts screaming, "This shouldn't be happening!" The exact moment he completely drops his preferences and accepts the cold as just cold and not as bad cold, the suffering entirely vanishes. The physical sensation is still there, for sure, but the mental agony is completely gone.
Which brings us to the final stage, phase 5, the way of walking alone. Emaciated, but with a crystal clear mind, Tishi survives the 30 days and descends the mountain. He returns to the Reigando cave only to find Musashi taking his final rattling breaths. The scroll of the Dokkodo is finally complete. Musashi weakly whispers that these final 7 precepts can't be tested in a few days. They just have to be lived forever. Another student there, Maganojo, outlines these final rules, and they are strict directives for a life of radical self-reliance. Don't just blindly follow what society believes. Don't hoard weapons or possessions for some uncertain old age. Respect the divine, absolutely, but never expect the gods to do your heavy lifting. And above all else, you can abandon your physical body, but never, ever abandon your honor. But out of all 21 principles written on that scroll, Musashi points out one as the absolute core of the entire philosophy. It's the master key that unlocks all the others. Without this single realization, the rest of the scroll is just meaningless ink on paper. And that is principle 17.
So the crucial point is this: do not fear death. Musashi teaches that the fear of death is the root of literally all human weakness. Think about it. We hoard possessions because we fear scarcity and dying. We seek approval because we fear insignificance. Musashi survived 61 lethal duels, not because he was careless or lucky, but because he entered every single one of them having already accepted that he was dead. By fully accepting his mortality up front, He eliminated all hesitation, all doubt, and he achieved perfect, unhesitating freedom in his actions. And this just circles back beautifully to Tishi's realization on the beach. By accepting our cosmic insignificance, the hard truth that the universe simply doesn't care, we are paradoxically granted absolute personal freedom. It's like a giant puzzle clicking together. If we don't matter on some grand cosmic scale, well, then we are completely free to matter on a personal scale. We're free to be good for no reason, to help others for no reward, and to walk our path simply for its own sake. Musashi passes away peacefully in the cave that day. Fast forward 10 years later, and we find Tishi wandering the countryside. He owns absolutely nothing but his swords and his clothes. He is totally, completely free. And one day, a young, desperate, masterless ronin approaches him, begging to learn the Dokkodo. Tishi looks at the boy, sees exactly himself from 10 years earlier, and slowly draws the symbol for acceptance in the dirt. He sends the boy out with no food and no money. The master is dead, but the cycle beautifully continues. So here is a challenge straight from the 17th century directly to your life right now. Are you truly walking your own independent path, driven by an internal compass? Or are you just bouncing around from one comfortable distraction to the next, constantly guided by partial feelings, the need for safety, and the approval of everybody around you? The 17th century context of samurai and clan wars, that's long gone. The Reigondo cave is empty. Miyamoto Musashi is dead. But the psychological battle, the fight against our own ego, the struggle to accept reality exactly as it is rather than fighting it, the quest to sever the attachments that make us suffer, that battle is literally identical today. The way of walking alone isn't some sad, lonely path. It is a profoundly liberated one. And that leaves us with one final, undeniable question. The scroll has been written. The wisdom is laid out perfectly before you, not someday, not when your circumstances are magically easier, but today, right now. How will you walk the path? Take that mindset with you into your week. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep walking, and I'll see you next time.